That's what you've said. When you tell me that Joe Biden is better than Trump, what you were saying is, hey, any human being's better than Trump. You're better than Trump. I'm better than Trump. Who cares about being better? That doesn't win elections being better than Trump. This isn't an objective game. Trump has an army out there, a well-funded army of white nationalists who've been bred and supported and encouraged since 2016. He knows exactly what he's doing. He hasn't admitted wrong. In fact, he's come out, many of those folks believe that this whole virus thing's a bunch of nonsense and that, yeah, he's being forced to do it, but boy, it was all a Chinese problem. That's the message they're doing. That is the message that Trump is delivering to his people, a racist, xenophobic message. And some of you idiots out there, and I'm going to go off on you for a second, some of you idiots buy into that. You're sitting there going, well, it makes sense. That's what I think too. Clowns. And I get upset about this. I apologize if I'm being negative. I get upset about this because I don't want to hear about left and right. There is right now in our country, the Overton spectrum is this. There is an extreme far right, and then there's a moderate right, and everyone else is shut out. That's the window I see in this country. And by the way, when I say everyone else, I'll put about 60-70% of the country is in this window that's just been shut out. So how did it happen? How did this happen? How did we get here where Donald Trump is likely going to cruise to a second term because they put forward a candidate who has so many flaws that he can inspire anybody? How did this happen? Okay, I'll answer your question. It happened because Donald Trump is a better candidate than Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, let me explain what happened. Bernie Sanders on February 27th had the Democratic election pretty much all sewn up. He had sewn up. He had it. It was done. It was fait accompli. It was done. Going into Super Tuesday, there was practically no way that Bernie wasn't going to destroy Biden. Biden had pulled close. He had done some well things. So what happened? President Barack Obama got on the phone. He called Beto. He called Pete Buttigieg. He called Amy Klobuchar. And within a few hours prior to Super Tuesday, all three had dropped out, or in the case of Beto O'Rourke, all of them had announced their support for Joe Biden. That's what happened. Their goal was to stop Bernie Sanders. This wasn't about being Trump. It was about being Bernie, and they won. And some of you out there helped contribute, and shame on you. Oh, and Elizabeth Warren supporters, you're in this doghouse too. I'm talking straight at you. Don't you ever tell me how great Elizabeth Warren is. Don't you dare. Elizabeth Warren, $14 million, and you act like she has something in common with you. How dare you? So where are we at? Where are we going forward? What's the transitions that happen in the 14 days of March? So I learned that. I don't trust any of the politicians at this point. And yeah, if I'm ordered to do so or I have to go knock on some doors this fall to vote Biden, I'll do it, even if Biden loses, whatever. But here's the real issue. As much as I'm poo-pooing electoral politics, I know this. Working people have to demand on their own strength. That's where it all lays. We have to do for ourselves. So the new podcast as I transition is it'll be called the Employment Podcast, because here's what's going to happen. We're already seeing it. Millions upon millions of people are being laid off. The podcast is going to be very similar to the way the 14 Days of March podcast was. The only difference about the podcast is this. There's a very, very important difference. The difference about the podcast is I'm going to focus exclusively on the people laid off, the working people who've been just throttled by the COVID-19. And my goal is to speak honestly and truthfully about what's happened. Because if you folks think for a second that suddenly on May 1st or June 1st or whatever that date is, that they're going to flip a switch and the country's going to roar back to life, maybe it happens. It does. Awesome. I'll celebrate and end the podcast. More likely than not, that's not what's going to happen. More likely than not, it's going to flounder. But here's the deal. I'm on a podcast. I'm going to be talking about the issues. And here's what the focus of the new podcast is going to be. Number one, I'm going to be watching the rich and the ruling elite as they continue to absorb up more money and more power and more control for this country. That's number one, and that's where it's going to stand. Number two, I'm going to share stories that I read and come across of working people trying to make it go. And they're going to be real, and they're going to be profound, and they're going to be heartfelt, and they're going to be emotional. And number three, I'm always going to try to talk about what can be done. I'm not going to sit here and just feel sorry or do it. I'm always going to preach some level of organizing to you. So with that said, I want to thank you all for listening to the 14 Days of March podcast. I want to thank you all for taking the time to listen and taking me into your earlobes and listening to me for whatever time you've been able to do it. And I wish you nothing but the best to you and your family. Thank you.